If you're watching this, it means that my dog has chosen a successor. Which is bizarre to me, but that's where we're at right now. What is this Clark Kent thing that's happening? Right, I give up. So if you're going to be a paranormal investigator at Eden Park, there are things that you need to know, and I'm going to try to tell you as much as I possibly can and cover all the things that I wish I had known when I took over from my grandfather. Most things that we find to be paranormal have totally logical explanations. But to that end, what's the difference between something that's paranormal and something that we just haven't really studied and classified well yet? For example, the giant squid phenomena. Hundreds of years ago, people thought they were a myth or a legend or some sort of horrible monster sea thing. But the ocean is pretty deep, and there are lots of things that we haven't discovered. And relatively recently, we found out that giant squids are a totally real thing that happened in the ocean. And they're just giant squids, and they don't have any sort of supernatural abilities. At least the ones they've discovered haven't had any supernatural abilities. Ghosts and spirits and things that have abnormal abilities. As far as I can tell, there may be some sort of scientific grounding for this. It has something to do with electromagnetic spectrums and the life force within us. Some people refer to this as a soul. Other people just say that it's something that happens when a bunch of molecules are rapidly moving in one host at a time. When humans die, whatever is in them does not stop. And that makes sense insofar as the idea that energy, once created, can't be destroyed. It can just turn into something else. So if your body dies, everything that you were, it has to go somewhere. Mostly anything that a human can actually come into contact with has these electromagnetic pulls, frequencies, these souls, spirits, whatever you want to call them. I'm not a scientist. I'm just working with what I have. To make this as simple as possible, I have a scanner around here somewhere. Anyway, it measures these frequencies within all living things, and some not living, it doesn't matter, within everything. Typically, humans have these frequencies, and so do animals. We usually average out like 0.5 or like a 1 on the scale of like totally normal to creepyville. But once a soul leaves the body, or the spirit, or the life force, or the magnetic, metaphysical energy that was powering your personality is gone, it kind of builds momentum. And that force outside of the body actually shoots up to like a 2 or 2.1. But the funny thing is, once someone is dead, whatever imprint they leave behind doesn't necessarily mean that there's a ghost, or that metaphysical ball of energy, soul, for lack of a better word, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's trapped on Earth or that it's haunting something. It just means that something traumatic happened, or something of great value or importance in a defining moment within that life form's lifespan happened, and it left an imprint, which is why usually you feel like certain places are haunted or certain things feel creepy. Occasionally though, those life forces do tend to get trapped. And as far as I can tell, there are actually 3, maybe 4 planes of existence for living things, at least within Eden Park. So the mortal plane, basically any life force below a 2.0, that's where we're at right now. This is tangible. It's kind of like how some animals can see colors on a different spectrum than you can, that you can't quite see, or how animals can see things in the dark, or how we can pick up on different colors that other animals can't. It's all about our senses and what we can perceive. It doesn't necessarily mean that like there's an alternate dimension. It just means that what we can see can be confined to one plane of coexistence between mortal beings. And then there's whatever's afterlife. The afterlife. The plane of death, I'm only saying it's a field of existence. because I cannot track what happens to the metaphysical essence once it gets to that plane. It might be gone forever, it might live on, there might be a heaven, there might be hell, there might be reincarnation. I don't have a way of knowing that or exactly what happens there. All I know is that once a soul gets to that point, I can't trace it back, and I'm okay with that. That whole thing frightens me. So you have the plane of the living and the plane of death, which is inaccessible to science and living things as of yet. And then you have the intermediary space. This is where ghosts happen. This is where creatures who have a higher electromagnetic frequency within their life force. That is such a generic term. It's where they live, though. Bouncy soul things above 2 live in that field. And basically it just means that the higher up your number is, the stranger you can interact with what's around you. And most humans are actually incapable of seeing things that are above like a 2.0 or a 2.1. The higher up something is on this frequency, the least likely it'll be for a mortal person to see it without outside help. There are some people who have like a genetic disposition to be more sensitive to that energy around them. And sometimes it's legit. They aren't necessarily paranormal, but they can see into that realm a lot better than the average person can. And sometimes we can kind of access it without meaning to. I mean, in everyday things like just really, really potent memories, flashbacks, deja vu. But as a result of that in-between space being so close to the mortal field, we can interact with things on that level. It just requires some outside help. And there are tools and technologies, and sometimes there are rituals and more homeopathic ways of interacting with ghosts, or whatever you want to call them. And that kind of brings us to the problem that I see occurring in Eden Park. Like I said, it's very rare to see a soul actually exist outside of the body in one space. But it's been happening relatively frequently lately, and they're not new deaths. Moreover, the ghosts, I'm not sure, but they don't have faces. And I don't really know why that would happen. Also, part 2, there seems to be some sort of, I don't know what to call it, border, maybe a wall around the town line. The entire town. All I know is that anything above a 2.0 on the creepy electromagnetic spectrum field thing, it can't cross the town line. And probably more shockingly, I don't know what happens if it tries. I mean, my friend Lexi, she tried, but then she kind of was repelled by the wall. But she was immortal, so nothing could happen to her. I really don't want to risk it on other creatures that I know in case something really dire happens. They might just bounce back too, or it could be something worse. I haven't really gotten to the bottom of exactly why this wall is in place. And I don't necessarily think that the faceless ghosts are linked with the town line, but I can't rule anything out until I find out exactly what's been going on. As of this video blog, I don't know. But I'll keep searching. It is almost time for my special someone to be home from work, so I need to go. But I will try to make more videos soon. Not that it'll matter to you, and hopefully they'll be more eloquent and better thought out than this one. Yeah, that's all. Okay. See you next time, Cadet.